People that walked in on their so having sex with another person, how did you react? Serious. Came home early from work. Noticed a strange car outside. Found them sleeping in our bed. Cozy as can be after doing the deed. They woke up to me closing the door and leaving. She called and begged me to come home. I said everything I had ever bitten my tongue about. Filed for divorce 2 days later. A month after divorce was final. I moved 1,000 miles away. She still wants me to come back and tells me it's the biggest mistake she ever made. People ask me why I even still talk to her. I say it's because I have to be civil. The truth is I'm still enjoying knowing she's struggling and that I won. Petty, I know. But duck her. RIP. Inbox. Thanks for the gold. Kind stranger. When I was younger I had a girlfriend. My mistake is that I thought we were close. I had a key to her place and worked part-time. My manager sent me home one weekend because we were overstaffed and there wasn't any point in me being there. I went and picked up a DVD and some ingredients to make dinner and headed to her place. I let myself in and could already hear suspicious noises. My heart was pounding and my brain was saying all systems go. I went upstairs and opened the door and lo and behold there was some guy balls deep in my girl. There was so many emotions that all I could spurt out was I hope his D tastes better than dinner and proceeded to dump my shopping on her floor and stormed out. Q texts calls saying how she was confused, wasn't sure if she still liked guys, how sorry she was. Let's just say I haven't had a girlfriend since. Edit. For those confused, I am female. Michelle was my girlfriend in question and a whore. Morning after edit. To clarify, I am bisexual but I don't feel like being in a serious relationship with a woman for the foreseeable future. Not exactly what you're expecting, but I walked in on my fiance registered signee being sexually assaulted. We were at a Halloween party and she got a little wasted. Mind you, everyone there were friends. Pretty damn close friends too. Everyone at this party was actually invited to our wedding. So my fiance registered signee disappears upstairs with the woman who owns the house and I think no big deal. My girl gets tired when she drinks. She's probably going to lay down. I assume the woman who owned the house, a very old friend of my fiance registered signee's, was going to lay down with her since they both have a history of doing this. Fast forward 45 minutes and the owner is back down at the party, but my fiance registered signee was nowhere to be seen. The owner told me she was asleep in the spare bedroom and she had closed the door and left her up there about 10 minutes ago. But something wasn't sitting right with me. So I went up to find her. The door wasn't closed. In fact it was wide open. And one of our friends, the husband of her best friend to be exact, was in the bed with her. Her dress was on floor and he had his fingers inside of panties. I hate to admit it, but I assumed the worst for a split second. Just a second, but I hate myself for it. I assumed she was encouraging it. But then I realized she was crying and he had tied one of her arms to the bed frame. Not only that, but she's a petite girl and he had most of his bulk on her holding her down. I hauled him off of her, broke his nose, and gave him a concussion before someone else from the party pulled me off of him after the three of our combined screaming brought people running. He attempted to sue me for assault. She pressed sexual assault charges. It hasn't been easy the past couple of months. Her best friend, the guy's wife, sided with her husband and cut all contact with my fiance registered signee. She was also my fiance registered signee's maid of honor, so she obviously kicked her out of the wedding party. Hopefully I'm not too late. This was the moment of my life. For a couple of weeks I suspected my girlfriend was cheating on me with this particular guy. We'll name him John. The relationship was going south anyways, but I just wanted the pleasure to see her face when I catch her. My buddy and I devised a plan. I told my girlfriend I was going home to visit my parents. I was away in college, but in fact I was staying at my buddy's place a couple of miles down. Then the stakeout started. We knew where John lived and decided to follow him throughout the day. I was obsessed. We took my buddy's car 6 in the morning, parked right where he lived, and started following him everywhere. Day 1 was a bust. John left the house only twice that day, grabbing his lunch and dinner nearby. Dude never cooked. My buddy wanted to give up that day, but I knew we would catch him eventually. Sure enough, the next ducking day he left his house 3 times. Lunch, dinner, and finally something after dinner. My heart was pounding. I can't even imagine to tell you the adrenaline I felt when I saw this guy leaving his house. Followed him for a few miles and sure enough we see him pulling over to my girlfriend's apartment. Waited about half an hour and decided it was time to walk in. This is when we come in. Walking down the lobby with tank tops, shorts, Happy New Year glasses, confetti poppers, helium balloons, party horn, and a DSLR camera all at midnight and ducking march. We slowly creeped into the room. I had the keys, and sure enough you could hear faint moaning. We busted the door open, screamed surprise, confettis everywhere, and the camera started flashing. We left immediately after that. Anyways, you ever seen a picture of a spook cat floating in midair and his fur all fuzzy? Well, the picture came out exactly like that. She was ducking him in reverse cowgirl, so we got a picture of her floating above his D in a squat formation while he laid down. Anyways, I texted her the photo the next day and said I would delete it if I got all of my stuff back. I never received my belongings in such a neatly packed box. I was on a trip and decided to come home a couple days early and surprise my now ex fiancée. We were not living together, so I was going to go to my apartment to shower because I took a red-eye flight and I wanted to wash off the airplane stink before I surprised her with some flowers. I walk in and I see a pair of shoes by the door that were not mine. I thought maybe they were my roommates. As I round the corner to my room I start to hear moaning and heavy breathing. I thought my roommate was ducking in my room, so I thought I would duck with him. I burst through the door and said something like surprise ducker and find my fiancée getting ducked by her roommate. I guess their other roommate had people over, so they thought to go to my place, which they thought was empty. I looked at them and I think you should leave the ring and the key. They freaked out and asked what I was doing home. I told them that this is my place and I didn't have to answer to them. They scrambled to collect their it and leave. In the process she left behind her iPad. I decided to go through it. I'm really proud of that, but I figured, why not, the wedding is off now anyway. Turns out she had been sleeping with a bunch of different people for the past 6 or 7 months. Edit. Spelling. I didn't say anything. Just walked in and she said the typical, "It's not what you think." I just walked out and haven't spoken to her in over 6 months. I don't even miss her. It's nice to say that and actually mean it. Married for about 5 years. Walked in on my wife and a co-worker on the kitchen floor. All 3 of us worked together, just to be clear, which I'll get to later. She worked graves and I worked days at the time, and Saturday morning was a time when many of our co-workers would hit the bar that happened to be behind our house. I remember seeing someone else's car in the driveway and assumed someone, likely a female, had crashed to avoid drunk driving. I remember opening the door super quietly to not wake anyone, and experienced something I was not prepared for. The first thing I heard was a rapid squishing sound accompanied by the moaning of my wife. This was quickly followed by the strong smell of I see them clear as day on the kitchen floor. I am not noticed until I close the door and greet them with a friendly, "What the actual duck?" It's difficult to even begin to explain what that does to you. I realize it's unfortunately not all that uncommon to experience cheating, but to walk in on it, especially when you are married, is a life-changing experience. I did not react the way I would have imagined I would. I simply felt nothing. My actions became autonomous. Told the fellow to get out now repeatedly as he insisted on apologizing and asked me to hit him. After several warnings I threatened to get my gun as I felt as if that was what you were expected to do. Eventually he left only after my wife told him to leave. I calmly went to the bedroom to remove my suit and get into something more comfortable as my wife remained in the kitchen, still laying on her back, covering her face. I left and immediately drove to a nearby apartment complex and called my boss, who is a good friend. As I was leaving I saw the other guy in my driveway, but I didn't give a it. I just wanted to get away. After telling my boss friend everything, I began the application process for an apartment. Not even 2 hours after discovering the two, because of the nature of the incident. Since my wife was the boss of the guy she was ducking, there had to be an investigation. I didn't intend for there to be an investigation. I just wanted someone to talk to. Less than 24 hours later, because some people on the committee can't keep their mouths shut, every single person I knew found out. It was a horrific experience that I am fairly certain has scarred me, yet strengthened me for life. 0/10 would not recommend. Edit. Per request I will finish the story. I hope that it's worth a read and I can make a difference in someone's life at some point. Or give everyone something to reflect on. I made the mistake of giving her a second chance about 2 months later. It lasted about a month before we separated and I filed for divorce. Don't ever give someone who cheated a second chance in a monogamous relationship. Ever. Cheating occurs when one's selfish desires exceed their compassion and respect for their partner. Period. You owe it to yourself to cut them out of your life like a cancer. Even if they become a better person afterwards, it simply should never be worth it for you. The emotional turmoil is surreal. For a while I would break down crying anytime I saw the color orange. She was wearing orange panties when I caught her. I chose to welcome the single life and to numb the pain with a large amount of booze. Time is a beautiful thing. Eventually I came to my senses and stopped drinking and started to progress to a constructive life. I did the classic stuff. I hit the gym. Became the strongest I have ever been in my life to coincide with the strength I wanted to develop mentally and emotionally. Resumed college and got a new job. It's been a few years but I like the direction I am going. I have more self-respect than I have ever had in my life. I have a wonderful woman in my life whom is a great support and complements my personality. I lost a lot of friends for various reasons but I am building new relationships. Does time help? Yes. But it won't fix everything. I occasionally struggle with trust issues, as well as anxiety, but it's getting better. Trust me on this though, it was hard as duck, and it still is on occasion, but you will learn a lot about yourself. Well, I walked in on them sleeping in our bed. I came home early from a road trip with a friend of mine and walked into my bedroom, happy to wake her up and surprise her. For whatever reason the guy had a Polaroid in the bedside table, so I took a picture, set it next to them, basically to say be glad I didn't kill you, and walked out. She tried justifying it later but I think I barely said 10 words to her after that. Edit. Thanks for the gold. Also, yes, it really did happen. It was an old camera but I'm pretty sure they were on a meth crash. Also I meant on, not in. Mobile sucks. Well, I came home from work about 2 hours early due to finishing up my paperwork quite early. Then I entered the bedroom ready to take shower. Then it happened. And to be completely honest, I just stood there and stared at them as they stared back at me. She then said, "Babe, it's not what it looks like." I then started laughing in an obnoxious way and turned around and left the room. Then when she came out of the room, I'm guessing he left the same way he came in the window. She found me playing Battlefield 4 on my PC. "Baby?" she said. I just replied saying huh. She asked if I was okay. I just said yeah, I'm fine. I guess she thought everything was actually okay and started to walk back into the bedroom. As she walked away I continued to keep playing and just said, "Oh, and you have 3 days to get all of your things out." She tried to get me to take it back and started to get frustrated saying I can't do that. I simply replied I signed the lease. I personally pay all the bills and everything that is even involved between you and I has my name on it, not yours. So you need to get out. I would appreciate that greatly. She then started to cry and I just laughed. Some may call me heartless for this, but if you knew the amount that I had put into the relationship and how much I sacrificed for it, you wouldn't blame me. I heard from friends that my first wife was cheating on me. I drove by my house and sure enough there was a strange car in the driveway. About the third time I did that I finally manned up and pulled in the driveway. After a few minutes to calm down enough that my hands weren't shaking, I went in and found them going at it. In the best deadpan voice I could manage I said, "Jesus Christ. Another one? How many guys are you ducking?" Haha. The joke was on me. The look on her face told me he really wasn't the first. Went out. Got way too drunk. Somehow managed to drive home without killing anyone. And as I sat in an empty house had a simply brilliant idea that I should take all her it outside and burn it. Ended up getting beat up by her guy, arrested for drunk and disorderly, and raped in court for damages and the divorce settlement. The upside was that years later I found out she was blowing guys in bars for rent money. So in the end I would call it a win. We'd been dating for over a year. She'd gotten a new job and to congratulate her I left work early and brought over 2 bottles of champagne. No one was answering the door. but her roommate was in the stairwell outside their friend's apartment and heard me knocking. She let me in. We both walked together to their room at the end of the hall, and as her roommate pushed the door opened, my so called out not to come in and I heard laughing. This point, I moved on a kind of numb autopilot and pushed the door open. She was on top of him. She threw the blanket over her shoulders and looked back toward the door. I honestly lost my it. I cried, screamed, went to absolute pieces. I knew the guy from other friends and he'd abandoned a close friend of mine after their daughter was born severely epileptic. She wasn't apologetic at all. They were in love. I drove home, bawling the whole way. I haven't loved anyone like I loved her yet in my life. I drank both bottles of champagne at my apartment and packed a bag, calling my family to pick me up. I spent a few days with them. Being back home reminded me of the actual, unconditional love in my life. She and the guy deserved each other. In the end, she called me almost a year later while she was living with him and wanted to come over. She wanted to have sex, so we did. Then I detailed the whole affair in a message to him and he kicked her out of his house. Everything works out in the end. People walked in on my then wife banging a friend she met in college. If the son of H hadn't been so goddamn gun crazy and hadn't spent 10 years in the army, I probably would have tried my best to beat the it out of him. Instead I said duck him. Duck you. I wanted divorce. And I left. Edit. Beat. Not best. Duck it, I'm leaving it. I love you Reddit, I'm drunk as duck and this only has a bit over 300 comment comment, but I love you anyway. Also I'm drunk. That may have something to do with it. Also duck my ex. Well, that's what this thread's about. I mean, if you want an emotional goddamn wreck, be my guest, but fair warning, I wouldn't. Nope. I was already at a low point in my life. I actually just got fired and came back to the hotel room where we were staying at. I reiterate, it was a very low point in my life, and went straight to the bathroom to take a it. Hadn't really thought about why my girlfriend wasn't there, sitting on the toilet. I recognized her singing through the vents. I could tell she was in the shower next door. Banged on the next door down for like 5 minutes before I heard the neighbor yell at her that it was me. I said open the ducking door, and he obliged. I walked straight past him and threw her clothes at her as she was getting out of the shower. As she argued with me, Dusha McGee decided that's when he'd step in and shove me and tell me to duck off. I promptly lost it, broke his nose and continued to throw him around his hotel room. I left when he started screaming about the cops. I just took off my bloody shirt and started walking down the street and kept going for a few hours, all before noon. It was a shitty day. I honestly don't regret my actions. Don't get ducking physical with me after I discovered you ducked my girlfriend. TLDR. Just got fired. She was next door. Scuffled with the guy for a bit. Went for a walk. My GF's roommate let me in. Looking confused. She said, I thought you were here already. Then I heard 6 noises coming from her room. I got really pissed off and stormed in, ready to beat the it out of him. But when I kicked the door in, the guy jumped off of her. And I swear his fully erect cock couldn't have been bigger than a Sharpie. It stopped me dead in my tracks. So I started laughing. Softly at first, then harder, until I was cackling like a damn hyena. I was doubled over, pointing at this guy's cock and laughing, and yelling at her, through hysterics. Seriously? Seriously? I grabbed my phone charger I had come back for, took one last look at them, then started laughing again as I left. My now ex-GF runs out in a towel, saying let me explain and all that it. I have no idea how my brain connected this, but I'll look at her, continue laughing, and yell, I've smoked cigarettes bigger than that, and open the door and walk out. Of course, as soon as I got back to my car my reaction went from uncontrollable laughter to sobbing and screaming, but I got the satisfaction of not letting her see it. There are 2 great PS's to the story, though. First, her roommate called me a few days later saying she had a fight with my ex for cheating on me. 2 days later, while the ex was at work, I ducked her roommate in her bed. Second, many years later, word reaches me that my ex was marrying this guy and their wedding was forthcoming. I order a Grow Your Own Bachelorette novelty toy on Amazon and have it sent as a wedding gift from a made up name to her mother's house. No word on if they got it. Edit. Well, it. Now this story has a 3rd awesome PS. Cause this whole thing got my ass gilded. Thanks, stranger. Had a group of friends tell me that they knew my then girlfriend had cheated on me with 3 other guys. I didn't believe it, and they drove me out to the party where she was at. Unbeknownst to me, all 3 guys were guys I knew, and they were all at this party. I stalked through the party looking for her, but I found 2 of the guys hanging out, confronted them, and they admitted it and apologized. I just walked off. I kept looking around for her, and finally found her in one of the upstairs bedrooms, just getting dressed after banging the 3rd guy. He was just standing there shirtless with all these piercings, with this smug ass look on his face. And so I confronted him and he said it's just 6. I don't even like her. I grabbed a nipple ring in each hand and ripped those duckers right out. Walked out of there with him screaming and bleeding as a bunch of people ran in to see what the deal was. I still have them. Thankfully it was only a girlfriend. Anyways, we lived together, and I got released early, military at the time, and came home. Caught her in the act, and honestly I think it was the dude's reaction that kept me calmer than anything. He started yelling at her, "Who the duck is this guy? And you said you were single." She had lied through her teeth to the guy, and to be honest, I've never been one to hang pictures or anything, or to live like a slob, so it is fairly believable he didn't know a guy lived there. Anyways, I just started packing my stuff, and she tried to yell at me, and cut at me and stop me from packing. She tried to take stuff from me, and dumped my bags, and I just kept my head down and kept packing away. Honestly, I think I took it the best way I could. There was other stuff like quickly contacting the landlord, and informing him I was moving out, at will tenant in a month-to-month lease, and getting out of there the next day. But my reaction was the only sensible thing I could do at the time, I think. Punched a wall that turned out to be a support column and broke my hand in 2 places. Not the brightest response. If I could do it all again, I would have just walked away and stayed away. First met my wife when I was studying abroad in China. We dated briefly over there and kept in touch online when I returned home. Eventually, the 2 of us got married and she moved out here to the States with me. Occasionally her family comes to visit. 4 years into the relationship, I catch her with her brother in bed. I didn't know what the duck to think. Is this a weird cultural thing? Is this guy even her brother? I got angry, yelled at her, stormed out for the night, and crashed at my friend's apartment. I went to work, came back home when she was at school, and the guy was gone. I go through her MacBook. Her Skype and email were saved. I find out the guy was her husband. The money we were sending to help her parents was being sent to this guy and her kids. We're since divorced. I haven't dated in years. I'm struggling with major self-esteem issues. No, I'm better off without her, but I miss the feeling of being in love and having a sense of belonging. Came home to see my, now, ex-wife getting a doggy style in our living room by some guy. They didn't realize I was there till I kicked him in the balls. Hard, hurt her too. The guy wanted to kick my ass but was otherwise occupied. Cops and ambulance were called. I said that I thought she was being raped. Never any charges for me and they were both out of commission for a while. Obligatory. Thanks for the gold edit. I vomited. It felt like it happened even before it registered what I had seen. It caught me totally by surprise. No suspicions. No sounds coming through the door. I was walking towards the door. Looked in the window as I passed. Suddenly vomited in the grass. As I'm heaving it slowly sinks in what I saw. I can't believe it. Totally caught me by surprise. I walk down the street to give myself some room to breathe. I sit down on the curb wanting to cry or something. I couldn't decide if I was devastated or furious. I sat there for hours. This was my first boyfriend in college. He was a lot of firsts, actually including the first person to cheat on me. It was my boyfriend's birthday and I was going to surprise him by decorating his room at midnight. He usually has work until 2 AM those days, so my plan was to go to his dorm room and decorate it. I knew his roommate was going home that weekend, so his roommate was nice enough to lend me his key. I have all the supplies with me and go to his room at 1 AM. I like to vlog things and was going to record the process, so I had my phone recording me entering his room. I swing open the door and I see him and another girl. I guess I have impeccable good timing because he comes all over her back as I open the door. And remember, my phone was recording all of this. I just kind of stand there. We all just look at each other and he starts to say, "Babe." Tears start falling down my face and I just lose it. I fall to the floor and start crying. He scrambles for his clothes and I just leave. I leave all the supplies there, grab my bag and phone, and just walk away. I went back to my room without saying anything. In fact, I never said anything to him ever again. He stalked me for a bit after. Fun fact, his roommate didn't know we broke up, messages me a few days after telling me he thinks my ex is cheating on me with a girl. He says the name of the girl, which is not the same girl I saw him in bed with. TLDR. My first BF cheated on me on his birthday. I cried and left in silence. Roommate messages me, without knowing we broke up, that my BF is cheating on me with a girl who was not the girl my BF was in bed with. BF was cheating on me with 2 girls. They were in the same room as me and about 10 other people and thought we were all asleep. Senior year, post-prom sleepover situation. The guy was a pretty good friend, or so I thought. I didn't leave the room because they were in front of the door. I cried into my pillow while they had sex. Edit. They denied doing it, which was strange. But it turns out there were 2 others awake in the room so that I collapsed. I found out she'd been cheating on me the whole time with another friend, because why not? She cared a lot about her reputation so I went after that. Small school so everyone found out quickly, because I didn't think it could get worse. Wrong. The girlfriend of the first guy, yes, he had a girlfriend, called me crying and asked if it was true. I could hear her heart break over the phone when I confirmed it. But they're back together. What? So I hoped he straightened it out. As for my ex, she's been dating some guy for about 2 years now and seems happy. Walked in on my ex, after 3 years together, with one of my best friends, at the time. Took a double take and just stood there for what couldn't have been more than 5 seconds. I then just drove back to my dorm and literally lost my it for a minute. I've never been one to actually be out of control of my temper, but at the time, all the emotions overwhelmed me as I fell out of shock. I will never forget that moment that I felt that I had no control over myself. It was both frightening